Welcome back, self-thinkers, to Judah Vision. Uh, I've got a couple of things to go over before we get started today. Um, Released kind of a lot of information in a short amount of time. It almost seems like, and it's pretty powerful information for the few people who are getting in there and digging in. I've had a lot of private messages, and now I'm having a little more open discussion, which I'm excited about. There's nothing these people can do to you, man. This is something they did. You didn't do this. Um, we're just pointing out some inconsistencies as the matrix begins to break down, as it fizzles its last couple of pops before we break down the veil completely. I'd like to welcome one and all back to Jew Division, and a lot has happened in the last week. Um, we exposed these two artists, and we've had a um, pretty powerful unspoken back and forth going on here. They actually, I don't know if you noticed, probably some of you guys who dug in a little deeper have noticed that all of those links went dead for a few days. And perhaps they realized how damnatory that was for them to kill those things all together and made them look very suspect, so they turned back on. But as I suspect, they're probably going to go back off as people get in there, because I've noticed their views are going up. And as I watch those things, and if you really want to understand what is going on in your world and you're digging into those resources that I've given you, um, then you realize that this is kind of a big deal. So let's get started on our Vegas Exposed episode for today, entitled Prophetic Article, Stephen Bancarz. Now, my research for this series here, when I ran into these two creepy artists at Delano Tower, brought me back to this fella who who had been in the occult before and had gotten out, and he had stumbled across our old friend JK Russ, who again had created this installation, collage installation in Delano Tower, the tower just behind the tower from which the gunman shot and killed those 58 people in cold blood in the streets of Vegas. And so he had uncovered this lady too, although, albeit he didn't connect them to the property of the shooting, he did connect to this artist, JK Russ, who, as you can see, was part of the design here, setting up these mirrors reflecting this ceiling, eerily reminding us of the Hotel California song, which I'm going to decode for you. Every line of that came to pass. But this kid, Steven, came across the same artist and noticed a bunch of creepy stuff that'll explain why we can't go tell the police about this whole situation. It's going to be a little like a Scooby-Doo episode, just like I mentioned, just as when we unmasked the Black Crow in this image here. And this is the lobby of the Hotel Tower on Mandalay Bay, another golden tower, just like the one from which Stephen Paddock shot. And you can see her art installment includes these creepy bird people, and there's these mirrors are used for fortune telling. There's one to your right here, but I want you to notice to your left here in this hotel lobby, this is the elevator lobby to your left, and the creepy image was on the wall of the elevator shaft there to the left. You can almost make it out on the left side of this trifold collage. But inside the same tower to your right, on the right hand wall, is this message that says, "Don't wait, the timing will never be just right," by Napoleon Hill. And as you can see at the bottom, it's hashtag Delano X design. The X in there is for Knights Templar. We've gotten to that. You can see the lighted flowers below for the mirror of perfection, the flowers, the life, and the mirror of perfection. The three ingredients for bringing back the god Amun-Ra, the destroyer of the Israelites, and a lot of different people throughout time by a lot of different names. As you can see, the plumage here this is the only one of these bird people. She put something in its hand, and in this one she actually put a gully knife used for human sacrifice. And again, you can see just to your left here of the gold or brass plate with her name on it, JK Russ. You can see there's the doorway. Those are elevator lobbies. That's the elevator shaft on which this particular blue plume bird is pasted. And as you can see, it's a falcon, just as in the Egyptian folklore. Here's the setup in front of the mirror. As you can see, it's an infinity mirror in the top. But anyways, we'll get back to all this occult stuff, but I'm not the only one who noticed this. I'm just the only one who tied it to the shooting by the clues in her and her boyfriend's painting. Again, her boyfriend Matt Cooper, back in another episode, we discovered that he painted the entire crime scene, and we'll see a picture of that later on in this, although we won't go into that in much depth in this episode. This guy, I like this guy, Stephen Bancarz. He's called a Christian apologist. I don't like labels before or after, and nobody should apologize for Jesus. But other than the label, I've watched some of his stuff, and it seems like a pretty good resource for people stuck deeply entrenched into this occult world. This is a guy, a light for them to watch, to kind of guide them out of this dark world they live in. And if any of you guys are watching right now, girls who are involved in this, back out, man. You might get in trouble, but back out. Come in and post something. Back out. Do the right thing. You'll be blessed for it. But I know that's a long shot. Eventually that's going to happen because this thing's going to start crumbling. But let me tell you who this guy is. This guy, Stephen Bancarz, founder of the hugely popular Spirit Science and Metaphysics site, was one of the New Age's most authoritative intellectual voices before undergoing a dramatic and controversial conversion to Christianity. A compelling combination of brilliance and gentle persuasiveness, and he is a nice guy. Bancarz is now simply the most exciting emerging Christian apologist in North America. I don't like that. But anyways, he seems to be leading people the right direction. Drawing from his background in philosophy and with an astonishingly deep understanding of theology that belies his youth, Bancarz is now using his considerable gifts for Christian apologetics on his new site, reasonsforjesus.com. Bancarz previously challenged and shattered any notion of the New Age as fluffy, quote-unquote, love and light spirituality, showing it as nothing less than satanic, even explicitly so. And so what I just wanted to let you know who this guy is, bring your attention to, is this article, Duper's Demise, which is an article from which I gathered a little bit of information, the information which will help you understand why we can't go to the police with this problem. Let me get you started on this blog that he wrote. City of Lights, City of the Light Bearer. Las Vegas is known as a town with a dark history of organized crime, but Vegas' association with the dark side goes deeper than its shady past of mob violence, gambling and prostitution. Beyond its gaudy casinos and bodies buried in the desert, Vegas is a city with a long occult history hidden in plain sight. In fact, the city's builders could scarcely have telegraphed their Freemasonic allegiance to the Babylonian mystery schools more openly. There's the Luxor Hotel's ancient Egyptian-themed Sphinx, obelisk, and Great Pyramid, from which the quote-unquote brightest light on earth, an homage to Lucifer, the light bearer, shoots into the heavens. Interesting. Then there was 2017's mass shooting at the Harvest Music Festival, and seems he's picked up on that terminology, harvest also. The Harvest Festival being an ancient pagan holiday, an obvious blood sacrifice concealed with what could hardly have been a flimsier or less coherent mass shooter cover story. The killings taking place directly in front of the pyramid, the Sphinx, and the obelisk, the phallus of Osiris. And then here we can see a picture of this horrible, horrible, bloody scene. And then he points out the occult phallus of Osiris overlooks the blood sacrifice to Satan. So another name of the same god-goddess thing we're talking about. And as you can see, he picked up on this even heavier than I even imagined in the beginning. And he points out that they even called it Sin City. And I've pointed out before that Sin was actually one of the early Babylonian cities of Nimrod's, named after one of these guys' sons. Could have been Nimrod or something like that, but I don't want to steer you wrong. That'd be a course for study. And he goes on to say, but only locals typically know that Las Vegas's Clark County Government Center is blatantly occult influenced, starting with its Pyramid Cafe, an actual stone pyramid. And I'd like to point out, I recognized this stone when I was going through the internet automatically, although it would have been a long shot at that time, but I'll show you that I matched the stone with the scene of the crime too, which is going to tell you why you couldn't call the police in Vegas and tell them about this. I'd like to also point out that whatever building just overlooks the top of this pyramid that appears, it's a lighted pyramid at night, just like the one at the crime scene, showing programming even at the municipal level here. But you can see behind it, there's some sort of an apocalyptic, uh, some sort of a building structure or so-called artwork behind it, which is very disturbing. And you have your Joshua trees in the foreground, which we've talked about. The cafeteria is in an adjoining room, meaning the pyramid itself is empty apart from bench seating and standing lamps, all removable to allow the space to be used for whatever purpose, he says. He says, the cafe overlooks the amphitheater with a stage area engraved with a Freemasonic sun worship symbol. And we'll get to that. But what I want to point out here on the sandwich board, it's actually an easel for a painting, which is used, as I mentioned, in high-level Freemasonic cult of Ishtar Solomonic magic, where a pyramid, just like that one, is placed on the easel from which to worship, and they'd put an altar in front of that. And we'll get into that in a little later episode because it'll help you understand the Bible a little better. A lot of the prophets actually describe pieces of this occult machine that could resurrect these demons to make men gods on earth. And it took me a long time to understand this with some deep meditation in the Bible and all the symbolism. But I'm going to share that with you throughout a series here after we get through this garbage. This is only to get people's attention so we can start moving forward. But I want you to notice a sandwich board that they, again, is an easel used in Solomonic magic, which is used in conjunction with a mirror. And I'm not telling you to go search for it, but there's a gentleman named Poke Runyon who blew the whistle on all this, and it is the forbidden fruit. He even tells you he describes it as Pandora's box, which is going to be handed to everybody, what used to be available only to high-level kings to become gods is now going to go to everybody, which is going to make this a creepy place. And you don't have to believe me now, just hang with me. But look, as you can see, just like on the sandwich board, this is actually the painting, the barbed quatrefoil altar imagery, on top of which you can see just a little bit of where the crime scene in the square above it, the tilted square above it, showed an image of a gunman shooting out of a window. You can watch the previous episode if you want to see that. But he's practicing this Solomonic magic, which actually has the image of the Luxor on it. Drawing the crime scene has someone shooting out the window of Mandalay Bay above that. And as you can see in the bottom, the synthesis of this is going to be, there's actually a caveman drawing cave art. And so they want to knock us back into time and to re-put their juju on us, making them think that there are gods again under better technology to give back to us and whatever else. But anyways, I want to show you how similar this is to the crime scene. So the actual municipal cafeteria where the cops and the judges eat, you're looking at it, and you can see it's got the same situation set up as Matt Cooper painted in his painting. And then it says, the cafe overlooks the amphitheater with a stage area engraved with a Freemasonic sun worship symbol. You can see that also at the Vatican, which he gets to. The meaning of the symbol goes far deeper, however, than merely representing the rays of the sun and sun worship. For the Freemasons, the point within a circle symbol represents sexual union, or the obelisk male generative principle, i.e. sex organ within the circle symbol for a female sexual organ. And the result of that is sun god, to give birth to this sun god. As you can see, he gave some imagery here, but we have the same imagery at the Vatican. This symbol is seen perhaps most famously at St. Peter's Basilica. And I want to point out too, at this obelisk, human sacrifice was conducted in the past, which I mentioned in my book, Back Upright, if you want to look into that more deeply and understand what happened at the Vatican. But that was actually a sundial at a chariot racing arena put there by Caligula and Nero. The two of them used that venue, and this was beforehand back in ancient Egypt too. It was a sundial, and every time the shadow of the obelisk would hit one of these marks, I believe sacrifices were made, something to that degree. I'm putting all this stuff together through stuff scholars did. I'm no scholar in any one of these particular areas. So I'm just conveying to you what the past history of this. This symbol represents sexual union, sexual ritual, and further the hermaphrodism of the god Lucifer, as represented by the hermaphrodite deity Baphomet. And again, this speaks to that androgyny of being able to go back and forth to confuse these societies by bringing forth different sexes of gods and things, different names and all that. Overlooking the elevated viewing platform of the sun worship stage of the spiral symbol, a symbol widely used by pagans. And he points this out. A form of the spiral has also been adopted as one of the many symbols used among pedophiles, as recognized by the FBI. I've noticed this a lot in our local Western art too, of the Native Americans, and I'd like to point out that I believe, especially with the symbolism that usually goes along with it, that it represents contact with another world or bringing some spirit back from another world as well. But I do know that this was an imagery that was used by the pedophiles. For the little I've studied that, when I've bumped into it throughout my studies, though I don't go into it very deeply. I always say, rather than specializing any of the in the patient's symptoms, I like to specialize in resuscitation. So always going back to the head and going back to the problem and figuring out what's happening, rather than getting caught up in a flat earth or a pedophilia, or you start to see the cracks in the matrix. We all know something is wrong, but we always make the mistake of specializing. We really got to keep going back. Okay, that's wrong, and keep going back. But in the pedophilia, I'd like to point this out. Then he points out that Clark County has that on there too, on their logo, along with a goat and these 4 deities. And I'd like to point out that these are the Delano 4 on the mirror, and then Satan. These are the 4 and 1 out of Revelation, and they were all also pointed out in Daniel, when Daniel predicts that Alexander the Great would die, and not through battle, but he would just die, and believe he was poisoned. But he said that 4 generals would sprout up in his place, which shows that they were practicing this same Solomonic magic, and he had taken on the beast, or Satan, whatever you want to call it, the head deity, and his generals, or got the other 4 deities out of that retablo from which Matt Cooper shot those people. And it's weird because you keep seeing this come up through the Bible, and they're pointing back to this altar and these 5 deities that pop up. But moreover, what I want to go back to is this pedophilia thing, because look, here is JK Russ with one of her snake people t-shirts on, snakehead woman, blue woman. I want to point out that Blue Bloods, that Amun-Ra was blue, and his followers were blue. But see her, that's the same thing as they're saying this pedophilia, this Stephen Bancarz says is a pedophilia symbol, and he used to be in the occult, and says that's what it is. And as you can see, this one holds special meaning to her, because I believe she's in Prague or somewhere, according to her social media, and this one's mirrored, and she's also shooting it from a reflection in a mirror. So this probably has all sorts of occult meaning to her. This next image that Stephen Bancarz points out, and something I think I've put in 2 or 3 of my videos, this pan association of this demon spirit, going back to Greek and Roman panthology. And so he points out the spiral symbol is an ancient one with much deeper meaning, used throughout cultures and history to symbolize the goddess, evolution, time, water, and the serpent, which was man, the serpent which flies in the skies. So Satan, before his wings were clipped, right? War, death, and rebirth, the spirit of the earth and the heavens, eternity, energy, and power. Returning to Las Vegas local government office, it should be no surprise that, entirely incongruent with what might normally be expected to be a stuffy local government institution, the featured artist whose work is displayed inside the building is currently JK Russ, a New Zealand artist, a stranger in our land, now based in Las Vegas, and a HuffPost contributor who wrote enthusiastically last year about attending the Quema del Diablo, Devil's Burning Festival, again a Burning Man-like festival, where she admiringly includes images such as these, and I've showed these to you. So be disturbed. This guy was pointing this stuff out before I even found the clues in these people's paintings. Look at these people with a Joshua Tree background to be blasphemous because Joshua was Jesus' real name, Yeshua HaMashiach, who's coming back. These people are going to need some thick helmets, man. And he points out, Russ also writes about attending these Las Vegas fashion shows featuring the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, quote unquote, an organization of gay male drag queens who dress as demonic nuns, supposedly to signal their rebellion against Christian sexual morality. So he's pointing out all the same exact things. If these pictures look familiar, I just showed them to you in the last episode. And again, I pointed out to you that in these black mirrors behind these dudes' heads on the right in the background, those have the date just before the year, the exact to the year, to the date before they shot those people in the street. So 1 year exactly to the date, these sisters of quote unquote perpetual indulgence are celebrating the driving mechanism behind the compulsive gambler who went up and shot those people through a tower similar to that one where you saw that creepy message on the wall and the knife and that goalie knife in the hand of the plumed bird woman over the elevator shaft. Here is some of JK Russ's own artwork other than the bird people, which centers around sexually charged images of writhing snakes and the goddess archetype. So I wanted to show you some of her artwork, and although it's not nearly as damnatory with the witchcraft, being an actual witchcraft, a graven image is spoken of in the Bible, images that are used for witchcraft and alchemy. Hers are a little more subtle, but I still marveled at them before I found Matt Cooper. So, and then this kid does a really good job of, call me, dude, let's collaborate. You have no idea what's coming, Steve. You want to be part of this, but Steve goes through and shows you this imagery. Of course, Satan came as a serpent to Eve in the Garden of Eden. More of that coming up out of this red rock. And I want you to remember in the Bible, in Revelation, it says this whore Babylon would be by a mountain, right? And this all J.K. Russ puts is these red rock, which represents in every mythology the blood sacrifice, and that's why they built temples in Heliopolis and those places where they had this red rock. But Stephen also points out Russ art repeatedly features goddesses with animal heads or masks referencing the pagan god hybrid gods. Animal head mask shown at the infamous 1972 Rothschild ball below. The Rothschilds are known Luciferians, he says. And you'll see this stuff, the Masked Singer, if you watch that creepy stuff, that is a deer head with a gas mask on. And again, the lead singer in that, I could have provided imagery, but I got so much to do, I apologize. You just got to point these things out to your family as you watch them. But then, the dude who everybody wants to win in the end is the gold lion, man. Wake up, Judah. Baroness Philippine de Rothschild shown repeatedly wearing Luciferian devil head and goat head jewelry. I don't get too much into Rothschilds and the depth of those things. Just the bloodlines, the skull and bones is what I get into, and the Russells and that. But that's, I'm sure there's a lot of content there for those who do. Russ's bird-headed figures. Look at this. He does point out the nudity and goes along with that whole horror theme, being fed by birds. And when I do my bird studies about the Bible, I opened up a bunch of passages in the Bible with this Bible verse that actually included the tower at Delano in it, and you're going to find that out as we go. But I've got to make this dump and get this Vegas stuff out of the way because it eats heavy at my spirit, and I need to be done with it. This kid even points out these bird-headed women are another reference to ancient Egyptian gods. He pointed these things out in this lady's work before I even found the actual her with a falcon head, which is Hathor, the actual goddess. You guys, please. Russ also references spider goddesses, another reference to the pagan concept of creation and destruction, birth, rebirth, and destiny. You guys, this goddess can be depicted as a weaver, but also as a hunter, tying it with the Antichrist, hunter figure, Nimrod, and reflects the dualistic beliefs of the Luciferians. This guy's an expert in this field, you guys. He was a major writer, made tons of money in the occult studies. He points out this spider imagery, which again, if you go look at JK Russ's social media, she was all excited. One of their galleries was, again, what looks like some more French, Paul Nash, uh, and Nosferatu and the Spider Woman. And this Nosferatu was given homage to Matt Cooper being a vampire, blood drinker. And look what he's got. It's this American flag coming out of his casket, out of his mouth. Looks like a computer chip, man. And we're going to talk about these things and what's God's pointed to me some things. What's going to happen here? And you want to be in tune because it's a Trojan horse. They're going to backdoor our electronics, you guys. And then, as you can see, again, she depicts herself with the pink hair, just like she did the pink pyramid on top of the Golden Tower in the Katy Perry Trojan Horse video. Dark Horse, it's called, you guys. And they show a pink pyramid on top of a golden tower. That's her tower. That's her tower. Luxor is the sun gods. We've gone over this in past episodes. But anyways, the spider imagery, I've wondered if maybe in Revelation why the Lion of Judah would have the tongue, which is a double-edged sword, and wouldn't even have to cut anybody with a real sword because these people weave such webs of deceit. And I bet you the high-level occultists around the world who meet at Bohemian Grove all know it's a possibility to pull this magic trick and become the sun god, which maybe they have all in agreement not to do, which is why maybe it says, I've always wondered about this, weaving spiders come not here. Perhaps she's that weaving spider, and perhaps her friends, occult friends around the world, are going to be the ones looking for each other when they find out they're trying to pull this magic trick. And when I show you what I have to unveil to you, which I'm sorry I couldn't do on the Sabbath like I promised you because I've got too much information in my dumps. I got to get all that out first, and then that'll be the final episode. But I wonder if, these people are always looking to have their eyes peeled for this kind of activity. And I'm going to prove to you with what I'm going to show you that this activity was by these people planned for 100 years, for almost 100 years. I'm going to prove that to you by what I'm going to expose at the end of the series. So tell your friends, subscribe to Judavision. Stephen goes on to say, given the dark, and again, this is her, a piece of installation of artwork of hers, a collage, and it shows the different casinos next to each other and different rock formations underneath it, which is very occultic, which I've talked about. The Lady of the Mountain, the horror, Revelation. Given the dark, unsettling, occult, and sexual in nature of her work, JK Russ is a curious choice of artist for a taxpayer-funded local government building, but if considered within the context of the architecture symbology and prominent choice of featured artist, I believe there is overwhelming evidence of luciferianism in high places in local government in Las Vegas. Is it possible that Luciferians, who believe the shedding of innocent blood brings power, use this government building and amphitheater for occult rituals and even sacrifice, he said. Wow, this guy seems to have been on to this stuff. I want to talk to you, Stephen, man. I want to talk to you because I found this stuff and I have some stuff to tell you. So if you can get in contact with this kid, let me know. I need to talk to him. He predicted this whole thing, in other words. He just probably couldn't have imagined that it would have happened in the actual pyramid with the lighted top as predicted on the $1 bill right in the streets of Vegas. As far-fetched as this may sound, he says, I believe it is possible. Certainly if Las Vegas local government were controlled by Luciferians who wished to hide their ritual activities in plain sight, the Clark County government building would provide the perfect setting. It's out in the open, guys. Whatever the case, Las Vegas is clearly not only the city of lights, but a city of the light bearer, he says, as the Luciferians conceive of him. But the real light of truth is spreading as victims of satanic ritual abuse speak out about the atrocities committed against them by Luciferians. We must continue to expose them, combat their poisonous doctrines, and shine the true light of the gospel to dispel the false light of illumination. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, people. You're going to see that. It's going to get better and better and better, Judah. And nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Luke 8:17. Amen, Brother Stephen. There is only one temporal, earthly power offered by Lucifer, but an eternity of separation from all that is holy. A simple glance at the images that come out of this Luciferian spiritual worldwide, as illustrated here, show the ugliness and corruption of their beliefs. These things bring only death, not rebirth. Jesus Christ's, Yeshua HaMashiach's sacrifice was the final atonement that is sufficient for all of us to be reborn for all time, redeeming us before the Most High God and bringing us into His presence, justified when we accept His precious gift. Expose the lies of the enemy, JK Russ and Matt Cooper. Go home and rejoice, for Yeshua HaMashiach has risen. God bless you, Stephen. I want you to get in contact with me. Here's the scrying mirrors aimed at the ceiling, just like in Hotel California. I always wondered what that was about. Mirrors on the ceiling, and right behind it you can get some pink champagne on ice at the Franklin Bar. And he put the pyramid on the $1 bill. You guys gotta be catching up here. This rock, which we'll talk about more, is an abomination of all abominations. This gentleman, just like in Hotel California, you can check out, but you can never leave. He followed me out and stalled me. He asked me if I wanted my photo taken in front of this split rock, and the reason being because I walked in and asked the gentleman, and this is the entrance to Delano Tower, if you're wondering. I went in and asked him, I said, where is that rock from? And he couldn't tell me. I said, there's no brass plate or anything, which is weird for a rock that's placed right in front of an entrance. And people, my spirit was already heavy because the only other big boulder I know at an entrance of a place was my Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach. And since this tower opened as Delano Tower on 9/1, it was supposed to open on 9/1, the falling of Lucifer to this world. I suppose this is where his resurrection took place, and that's what he's trying to say, that he's Jesus. This is spirit of Antichrist, people. Matt Cooper is the spirit of Antichrist. Every picture he draws has your Savior bleeding. And if he's not now, he will be, because every knee shall bow. And this is two Bible stories mixed in one, because as you know, one of the things that angered God about Moses, who was considered to be God's friend, is God smacked this rock and split it with his staff. I suppose given the impression that it was from his works that split that rock when it was Yeshua HaMashiach's power. And this is what angered Moses, if you guys always are God about Moses, if you always wanted to know. But this is showing those two powerful things that are gods, and Satan is trying to steal this. But what I want you to know, Mr. Satan and Mr. Matt Cooper and JK Russ, is these boulders have boreholes in them, and Yeshua didn't need that. But I want to show you where they came from. JK Russ knows where they came from. She has a picture on her social media of one such boulder. And I want you to know that these are clay mixed with iron, because they have iron ore deposits in them, just like in Daniel's account of the statue, Nebuchadnezzar's statue, the iron mixed with the clay, us people. But that iron mixed with that clay is the blood of the saints, is what it is. That's what they celebrate. That's what the Egyptians celebrate. And if you're thinking about going to the police station, they got one just like it there. In fact, they've got them scattered all around it. It appears as if this relationship goes back a long ways, people. This goes back a long ways. And why is this relatively new stranger to our land working on so many projects? Look this lady up, you guys. There's supposedly projects that other people in America are competing for, and she's winning them hands down, just like I'll show you that she brags in one of her interviews that Matt Cooper won his visa in a lottery. Bullshit. He didn't win it in a lottery, you guys. He didn't win it in a lottery. These are skull and bones families. Look at this. Stone World tells you that this is the Vegas cut series. And I noticed that there was a lot of this harvest symbolism. In other words, around the shooting, like Jesus Campos, his last name means these grassy fields, right? Paradise means something similar. Paradise is always also what Nebuchadnezzar's son Belshazzar named his kingdom that he said would never fall, and he also was building a wall, and he also had a bunch of concubines and wives. Okay, now this Vegas cut is what they call this rock that you saw in the abomination in front of the Delano Tower, symbol of Antichrist. Vegas means the meadows. The meadows. So Vegas cut, what that rock is called, is literally means the meadows cut. And the iron ore, which stains that clay red, is the blood of the saints. You can see this installment they're building behind the pyramid on your left there at the Clark County Government Center, where JK Russ's installment is inside. JK Russ has bean bags in there, and she actually is the installment inside this pyramid. Thank you for listening today. I've got 2 big dumps for you before I can give you the goods. Tell all your friends, man. Let's get people subscribed to Judavision. It's going to get really cool when we get into the Bible. I don't really like this part. It's just necessary to wake people up and open their eyes, man. But join Judavision, and if you want to get ahead of class, you've ever been stuck in opiates, somebody that you know has been stuck in opiates, I have a great book that's really blowing up the airwaves out there, and it's opening some eyes, and it traces back the opiate problem back to the Order of Skull and Bones and Yale University. Same bloodlines of people who you see all these clues scattered around, traced back to that Delano Tower at Mandalay Bay. Again, thanks for joining us today. If you want a little more truth about these bloodlines, I can go to Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, which was a bestseller on Amazon.com, and The Philosophy of Good and Evil for 2 years. So there's something good in there. I've always wanted to re-edit it, but why do it? It's my most popular book. But this Back Upright is my pride and joy, man. I went through the Old Testament and traced these people all the way through there. If you want to know how the system of making a sun god rise, you'll see it all the way through the Greek and Roman versions and all the way back. But anyways, thanks for joining me. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. Little by little, start to open the eyes of others. God bless you. Judah.